I turn attention now to what's happening in the Russia-Ukraine war. The latest is that there's a phone call with Ukrainian President Zelenskyy and President Donald Trump, where it was proposed that America could own and operate Ukrainian nuclear power plants as part of his latest effort to secure a ceasefire in the over 3-year war. White House stated that it had moved beyond the idea of taking control of Ukraine's mineral resources in the talks and now focusing on long-term peace pacts. Following this call, Zelenskyy clarified that the two leaders discussed only one power plant, referring to the Zaphorizhzhzia nuclear plant, which is currently under Russian occupation. Zelenskyy also mentioned that Kiev was ready to pause attacks on Russia's energy infrastructure. So all talks being centered around the energy infrastructure of both countries. That is the direction in which these talks are going. First, listen in to White House remarks after that call, and then we come back and talk in detail about this.
President Trump also discussed Ukraine's electrical supply and nuclear power plants. He said that the United States could be very helpful in running those plants with its electricity and utility expertise. American ownership of those plants would be the best protection for that infrastructure and support for Ukrainian energy infrastructure. Now we have moved beyond the economic minerals deal. We are at a place of peace. We're at a partial ceasefire, and we're moving towards a full ceasefire and a long-standing peace in this conflict. And that's great news for the American public.
All right, Disha Bakshi joins me to talk more on this. Disha, now which way are these talks headed? What is the indication looking like?
Right, so as we heard the White House talk about the fact that US has now moved beyond any sort of critical minerals deal and is now in fact suggesting that US is actually looking at, ownership of Ukraine's nuclear plants. So now Ukraine has several key nuclear plants. One is Chernobyl, which has been shut for since 2000, and Zaphorizhzhzia nuclear plant, which is one of Europe's largest nuclear plants. And now US is indicating that perhaps they are looking at taking over or taking control of these power plants and help Ukraine run these nuclear plants. Now, to tell our viewers, this nuclear plant is currently shut since 2022 and is actually under Russian control. So, and it has been witnessing certain attacks, drone attacks from the Russian side as well as the Ukrainian side, which is why it was shut down. Now, this indication, in fact, is progress in the talks and really opens up a new phase in the negotiations between the two sides. And the fact that now there is a ceasefire, there is a halt in attacks on energy infrastructure doesn't mean that all attacks have been halted. In fact, just hours after the conversation between US President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelenskyy, there was overnight drone attacks between Russia and Ukraine. In fact, Ukraine shot down 75 of 171 drone attacks from Russia, as well as Russia also claimed that there were certain drone attacks from the Ukrainian side. In fact, Ukraine even targeted a key airbase, Russian airbase, which was used by Russia for the last 3 years to target Ukraine with long-range missile strikes. So the attacks are nowhere close to ending. It's just that certain energy targets are no longer being targeted. And in fact, they're also exchanging barbs, where Zelenskyy has said that any peace claims by Russia is in fact propaganda, whereas Kremlin is saying that these recent attacks are indicating that Ukraine is not serious about peace.
All right, Disha Bakshi, appreciate you giving us a lowdown of what's the latest that's unfolding and which way it's going from here. And in fact, that's really going to be one of the big questions that I'm going to put forth to my guests joining me on India Global. First up, the big questions around this is that will this allow the United States to now become a bigger stakeholder in the war when it actually takes over energy infrastructure, whether it's a single power plant or more than one? Does it mean that America will now have skin in the game? Second, will this also probably act as some sort of a security guarantee for Ukraine, something that they've been crying hoarse about? Trump administration has rejected completely. But could this really be that some sort of a guarantee that Zelenskyy has been looking for? And could this essentially pave the way for some sort of a larger peace deal as far as Russia-Ukraine is concerned? And lastly, something that is most important is that these nuclear plants, particularly the Zaphorizhzhia one, is under Russian control right now. If President Trump were to insist on taking it, is that going to have a bearing on the relationship between US and Russia? That, I think, is going to be extremely important as well. and needs to be discussed in detail. Edward Joseph, who's a political analyst, joins me live to talk more on this. Olena, always good to have her joining us live to talk more about the Ukraine side of it. In fact, Olena, let me start with you, which is that as things stand right now, it is no more just about critical minerals. It's much more. It is about the power infrastructure of Ukraine that America feels need to be part of any potential negotiations where America wants to be involved in.
Well, I would not put such great significance to this conversation that happened between Zelenskyy and Trump regarding Zaphorizhzhia power plant, because President clarified already yesterday evening that it was just a conversation about U.S. Taking under
Olena,
control.
I am not saying it. I played the White House press secretary's comments after that call, which said that they've moved beyond the critical minerals part. We played that sound bite for our viewers. So it's in that context that I'm asking you.
I heard this, but I'm just telling you that the mineral deal right now is not even discussed. This new discussion about power plant, it is just, I would say, talks, conversation. It doesn't really mean much. What really is happening is that Putin rejected the peace deal that Trump proposed. This is what has happened so far. And all these other noises which are created, conversations, what can be security guarantee, what cannot be security guarantee, this is just noise. Right now, America doesn't have leverage right now on Russia to do what Trump wants Russia to do, to stop, to have the ceasefire. This is what's happening. And right now, America needs to look for this leverage.
Mr. Joseph, you want to come in there and respond to what Olena just said about the fact that President Trump has limited leverage on President Putin, and which is why power plants, Ukrainian power plants, is becoming an important part of these conversations.
First, good to be with you, your other guests, and of course your viewers. And that's true. What the other guest has just said about the limited leverage on Vladimir Putin is true to a degree. It's not really so much about leverage. It's about the willingness to use U.S. leverage. That's really the key point here, and that's why this nuclear power plant is not just noise. No, this is not just noise. This is significant politically, even if it's only in a preliminary discussion. This is quite significant. Why? Because this is about the positioning of the United States relative to Ukraine and relative to Russia. And what we saw, of course, everyone across the globe witnessed the disastrous meeting in the Oval Office, witnessed prior to that President Trump calling President Zelenskyy a dictator, pressing that they have to have elections. And then what happened? We saw after the meeting in Saudi Arabia this reversal, where Ukraine's delegation accepted the ceasefire. The U.S. changed its tone towards Ukraine. That all the ball, everyone noted, was then in Russia's court, and there was this long conversation between President Trump and President Putin, but there was no agreement on the ceasefire, and they know that in the White House.
Okay.
They know that there was no agreement, and that's why this is significant, because it further aligns Washington and Kyiv. That's what's significant here.
Indeed.
And then, of course, the pressure will go back on Russia. Please.
I was coming to just that, Mr. Joseph, that how do you see that in terms of allowing U.S. to put pressure on Russia? I was coming to just that.
Yeah, well, that's this will become the inevitable question, and then it's simply a question of whether the President Trump and his team will allow themselves to see reality in Russia as it is. That whether they will allow themselves to understand that President Putin does not want to end the war. That in some respects, many people, insiders in Russia, believe President Putin cannot afford, physically cannot afford, will not survive politically or possibly physically if this war ends, because if it ends short of the vision that he has to completely subdue and control Ukraine.
Okay.
And so that's why these steps are there. They're not trivial. These are important because they align Ukraine and the United States, and that's tremendously important for ultimately resolution and awakening in the White House to the reality of Vladimir Putin and his objectives with this war.
Olena, respond to what Mr. Joseph is saying. This is probably the best piece of discussion that you would have heard all morning, isn't it?
Well, no, I agree with the other expert that right now, U.S. is looking for this leverage on Russia. But when we speak on technical terms about this power plant particularly, it is now being controlled by Russia. President Zelenskyy said in order for this power plant to start bringing money, to start bringing energy, there should be probably 2 years of different repairs to bring infrastructure which is destroyed around it, to bring water supply which is destroyed around it. And how America is going to take this power plant from Russia's hands if Russia is not willing to concede even small things to Trump? So this is why I said it's noise, and I just think that right now. There will be what we will see. There will be more and more talks, more and more calls, more and more meetings. And in the meantime, what Russia will be trying to do, it will be trying to throw all weapons they can on Ukraine.
So I'll tell you what. Okay, of course, this is a 3-year-long war. A lot of movement forward and backward has happened. In fact, in just 2 months itself, with President Trump, so much of back and forth has happened, Olena. But I want to ask you this quickly, which is that, as someone who wants peace to happen, someone who understands the framework and contours in which it is being discussed, what would be that one first vital step that you think is very important to move towards some sort of a peace settlement?
War coming from Russia. There should be some mechanism created to pressure Russia so that they want to stop the war. This is what should happen. Sanctions, tariffs, I don't believe there is a leverage in the short term that America has, but I believe America has long-term leverage. And Trump promised sanctions, tariffs. Where are those sanctions, tariffs? Because I don't see incentive for Putin to stop at all right now.
Right. And Mr. Joseph, you want to come in there in terms of what would you want as the final and most important aspect?
Well, we have to remember here President Putin's strategy. He wants to divide Ukraine from the United States. He wants to divide Europe from the United States. So anything that aligns Ukraine and the United States is damaging to President Putin. And that's why this posture, this cooperative, collaborative posture from Kyiv towards Washington is encouraging, even if the talks on the Zaphorizhzhia power plant are only preliminary. The fact that it's in Russian hands is all the better for Ukraine, because then that gives the U.S. Incentive to back a deal that would not see that territory remain in Russian hands. So these are indicators. We're talking about this as a political situation. It's not about who actually controls the plant and when that would actually happen. That's far off into the future. But the political dynamics here are crucial, not to be underestimated. And yes, President Trump does have leverage. He has short-term and long-term leverage. He can, on Russia and both with respect to Ukraine. On the Russia side, he can increase sanctions, but that's not only it. He can say, I'm breaking with the Biden caution, and he can increase weapons to Ukraine. Please.
All right, we have to leave it there. Let's hope that finally some forward movement takes place when it comes to these peace negotiations. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me on this broadcast.